This week, we bring you an update on the state capitol veto wars. Governor Youngkin is setting records, getting up to 201 vetoes, sending more abortion, gambling, and LGBTQ propaganda bills to the trash bin. But will neighborhood slot machines be resurrected out of the trash heap? We discuss this and more. Welcome to Speak Up, Virginia, equipping you to speak up on the life, family, and freedom issues that matter most to you. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candi Cushman, with our president, Victoria Cobb. Welcome back, everybody, to Speak Up, Virginia. Glad you're with us. Before we get started today, Victoria, I just had to bring up this adorable baby with the grumpy face that's been going viral on social media. I'm just going to put a few of these pics on the screen here. I mean, is this not the cutest grumpy face you have ever seen?
It is definitely cute, but I'm not going to lie. When I saw this, I was reminded of, and I'm going to date myself, but the Seinfeld episode. I don't know if you've ever seen this. Okay, but it's literally them talking about how you have to say every baby is cute no matter what happens. And like the doctor goes in, says this baby's cute, and like their friends had a baby or whatever.
Yeah.
And the best part is when Kramer like looks at the baby and has this, Kramer like the character he has this like uncontrollable because he doesn't have a filter. Anyway, it just reminded me of this because this baby is actually adorable, but making crazy faces.
Yeah.
Like, what in the world?
I just love that he looks like a cute little grumpy old man already. I mean, maybe he's smarter than the rest of us because he knows he should be grumpy about coming into all this chaos.
Aww. But there's so many good things too. But it's got to be a bit disruptive coming out of the womb into real life. But it's pretty cute.
I feel like he's going to be smarter than the rest of us because he's already cynical about our role. He's going to be president or something.
That's sad, Candi. We don't want people to be cynical until they're old.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me give a little background on this. So this is a photo of a brand new 7-day-old baby. He's got hundreds of thousands of views. The photographer says, I've been photographing newborns for a decade and have photographed hundreds of babies who've given me tons of great expressions, but none, and I mean none, compared to the looks this sweet guy threw my way.
Well, he is incredibly expressive. Like, that is actually, for the baby that young to be that expressive is pretty unusual.
I'm telling you, he's smarter than the rest of us. He's going to be...
If you say so, that just makes me sad. I don't want cynical to be associated with smart. I want to think the world is different than that, but okay, fair.
All right, well, getting into the serious stuff, and maybe we will all have grumpy faces during parts of this, or all of it, I don't know. But, we've been covering all the wrangling going on between Governor Youngkin and the General Assembly. And, of course, since the legislature is controlled by leftists right now, as we expected, they sent a whole bunch of anti-family, anti-life bills to him, which he had to decide to either veto. Well, most of them he vetoed or sent back amendments, changing them, adjusting them to have some kind of reason. So, predictably, the Democrats rejected all those amendments, and then he had to decide, because they're coming back to his desk, whether to let that flawed bill become law or veto it, as the final say.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, though. He's getting a bad rap about all this, but it's a really good thing that he did that. I mean, we have a legislature controlled by liberals. That is why people elected a good governor. I mean, I think people knew we need somebody. I mean, Family Foundation was saying it. We needed a backstop to the crazy ideas. And so actually him setting a record in this area is really responsible to stop us from... I mean, I used to say from turning into California, but I'm not sure who's leading anymore when we have this many crazy ideas coming through.
Yeah. Well, I also think it shows the effectiveness of all of you that answered our call to action to reach out to the governor. I think he heard those voices and responded. So let me just stop and say thank you to everybody that took the time to respond to our call to action and communicate with the governor on vetoing these measures. So just want to start out with that. But also we wanted to give you an update on where all this landed since a lot of you did take action.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest wins here had to do with these so-called right to contraception bills. And there was a big push on the governor to sign these. But we had concerns from the get-go Tell us real quick about some of those concerns.
Yeah, we had a couple major concerns. One was that the word contraceptives was a little misleading because it included abortifacients. And the second one was that it didn't really have any conscience clause. It didn't have any kind of religious freedom for those that objected. And then, of course, I should say the other one is that it would undermine parental rights because access to contraceptives to anyone also includes minors.
Yeah, I think the bill had a right for a person.
Yes.
So as you point out,
it didn't
that
stop with
includes-
over 18
Yeah.
or, out of the care of an adult that should
Yeah.
be weighing in on these things.
So if you're a parent and your child decides to experiment sexually, and I
they
guess
would have a right
Yeah.
to contraception. So it was extremely concerning. And the Democrats basically piled on pressure. So they delivered something like 37,000 signatures to the governor from Virginians to encourage him to sign this bill. But he did the right thing and he stood strong and he vetoed this package. So let's just listen to the clip of him talking about this.
Top of Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin's historic number of vetoes. According to the governor's office, Youngkin vetoed more bills in 1 year than any Virginia governor has done in a single term. That would be 201.
Yeah, and among the bills that died at his desk, several focused on codifying the right to contraception into Virginia's law. Our Matt Gregory has more now on how the governor's veto affects contraception in the Commonwealth.
Governor Youngkin basically said that the bill was unnecessary, that contraception access in Virginia is already protected. But Democrats who worked on the bill say that's what people said about Roe v. Wade, and look how that turned out. A contentious Richmond session just wrapped with Governor Glenn Youngkin vetoing more than 200 bills from the majority Democrat General Assembly. One of those bills?
The Contraceptive Equity Act. I was chief co-patron with Senator Hashmi.
Virginia State Senator Jennifer Boysko said that would have codified contraception into Virginia law.
Would have provided the right for anyone who needed contraception to have access to it, including IUDs, birth control pills, and other methods.
The bill passed, then Governor Youngkin stepped in.
He gutted it with an amendment that made it basically useless.
All right, Senator Boysko is complaining that they had to reject these changes, that the governor gutted their bill, made it useless. I want to know what the accurate picture of this. She's saying that's why they had to reject his changes, but what's really going on here?
Yeah, okay. We first need to understand that access to contraceptives has never been in question. It is completely protected by the Supreme Court and by other laws, right? So that's not what this bill is actually about. This bill is about two things. It's about making sure minors get contraceptives without adults being involved, and it's about making sure that we force people to be involved in this, so that because there's no religious freedom clause, there's nothing that says, okay, in this case you don't have to be involved. And so in that sense, what it really was intending to do, which they didn't want to say was what they were intending to do, yeah, he did do that, but he didn't gut access to contraception.
And tell me what you were explaining earlier about when people create a sweeping right, why that's taking out parental rights.
Yeah, the bottom line is, if someone has a right to something, if a child has a right to contraception, which this bill would have done, then a parent who steps in and says no, they are blocking a right. That is illegal. Same thing with a doctor. If someone has a right to contraception and that doctor, and it's an abortifacient, for example, and a doctor says, my faith is not going to allow me to provide you an abortion, then he's blocking their right. That would be illegal. You can't block someone's fundamental rights, and that's what they're trying to do.
So with parents, if your kid wants to sexually experiment while you're not there at home and use these abortifacients,
right.
They now would have had an exalted right, a specially protected right.
Yeah, that's the issue. And so, it's a huge problem when you create these sweeping rights, and that's why our rights that are spelled out in the Constitution are very clear and very limited. We don't have a million rights to everything, and there's a reason, because they trump everything else, if that makes sense.
So considering the high pressure tactics thrown at him with this, what do you think helped keep him strong on this?
I think he's being true to who he said he is. He has been so strong on parental rights, and he saw this bill for what it is. They might as well have labeled it literally the bill that's, contraceptive access for children. And, he knows that blocks parental rights. So I think he's been solid on that. He's been solid on being pro-life, and these did have abortifacients. So I think he's been really good about following through with what he said when we wanted to elect him, when we looked at the campaign.
Now, there was this other bill that was part of the package that gets more into, I think, the religious freedom concerns, and that was the so-called Contraceptive Equity Act. Explain to us, how that really would have been a problem with religious freedom.
Well, again, it was mandating, it's this idea of mandating coverage. So it was mandating healthcare coverage. Healthcare, we'll put that in quotes because not all of this we would argue is healthcare. Health coverage, I guess is a better way to say it, of abortion causing drugs. And so you run right into sort of one of those problems that people are familiar with like Little Sisters of the Poor. Are we going to really make faith-based health providers be a part of this process?
In that case, a group of nuns.
Yes, a group of nuns. Are they really going to have to provide this to their, so that's the dilemma.
Okay. Now, Democrats keep using the same fear-mongering tactic. We keep seeing this over and over. And in this case, they're trying to claim that they need these, as you were saying, sweeping rights because conservatives are trying to use the Supreme Court to ban contraceptives. Tell us.
I've missed that movement. I don't know where they're getting that because I've never seen a movement. I'm sorry, you were going to ask a question.
It's interesting because it seems like the same type of tactic that they use with this abortion amendment. Help people understand what the truth is behind this claim.
Well, it's a tactic. You go to the most extreme. I mean, there could be one person on the planet that wants to ban contraceptives, but if you can put that threat out there, then people have to come in line with your position, right? So that's what they do, is they put the most extreme position out there, even if Virginia is nowhere near being able to be that extreme. We're not an extreme state. Even Alabama has not banned contraceptives. So it's just a threat, a tactic, a strategy to win the PR war is really what it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, since we're on the subject of Democrats claiming to be the big protectors of women, tell us about this whole birthing people thing.
Yes, I'm super thrilled to say that the governor vetoed this as well. But basically, they had a bill, and the bill itself, the underlying bill, was not a problem. The bill was to collect data to help improve maternal care. So actually probably a good thing, and deal with the quality issues there. But they had this one bizarre problem in it, and that is that they basically, in this bill, instead of referring to women or pregnant women, they basically said all birthing people in the Commonwealth. So they called us birthing people. And thankfully, the governor had made an amendment and said, let's take this thing out. And then they rejected it. So we were back at the table.
I mean, that's really brave of him because he could have had a lot of pressure. Well,
because it does a good thing.
Yeah, it does a good thing. Why was it important that we couldn't put up with this language in the bill?
We have got to stop these efforts of erasing women, of making it seem like men can be women in the most important fundamental female thing, which is that we can get pregnant, that we get to bear children. And so this, I think, while you might argue it's a language thing, it's just a bunch of words that nobody even reads, there have to be lines here. And when we keep erasing women, we will get to the point where there are real ramifications. And so I'm real pleased that he just said, no, we're not starting this. We're not doing this in our code.
I mean, that's what I didn't like, that you actually are erasing women like we see happening in sports. I mean, and so here it's language, but it has real life impact. So that's what bothered me.
Yeah.
But I did also want you to talk to listeners about, we had covered this in a previous episode, how Republican Senator Mark Peake tried to offer an amendment to correct this. Tell us what happened with that.
This is the thing. There was an effort to fix this in the process, and the Democrats, every Democrat on the committee rejected that effort. So if they cared about the underlying content of this bill, if they really wanted to improve maternal health, they could have taken this amendment. Governor would have signed it. We'd be doing what they wanted us to do.
Yeah, and just to clarify, that amendment, it would have actually clarified that mothers, not men, give birth.
Right, but I think it goes to show you that this is all just a Trojan horse. This is all like they're trying to usher in this agenda, and they care more about the agenda than the actual maternal health issues that were at play in this bill.
Yeah. Okay, another important veto that I wanted to ask you about was the veto on this so-called anti-bullying bill. Now, again, you have kind of this same tactic at play here where they claim they're trying to protect people, but they're sneaking in this language with an agenda.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is we actually already have very strong bullying laws. If they're not being implemented well, we need to deal with the implementation, right? Like if something is happening at a school, then we need to deal with that. But they tried to claim that they had this measure that was going to do more for bullying, but all it did was actually itemize who the bullies who you were bullying. So basically, instead of bullying being wrong no matter what the reason is, they itemized it's really wrong if it's against somebody who falls into the LGBT category.
Yeah.
And we know bullying is wrong no matter what the intention is or who the victim is.
Okay, well, predictably, you had people out there saying that the governor vetoed this because he doesn't care about LGBTQ kids or protecting them, which we know is not true. So help us understand the real reason for his veto. Maybe we can just look at what the governor said here when he vetoed it.
Yeah, I mean, the governor said he vetoed it because they rejected his amendments, and what he was trying to do was make it an expansive definition of bullying. That was his goal, and you've got to be concerned that when they're doing this, they're actually trying to sort of it actually causes problems when you get to the issues of locker rooms, bathrooms, all these things, when they're inserting this special class of people as this is where bullying is really wrong. Well, what does that mean around can you still have bathrooms that are appropriately for those that are the biological gender of that said bathroom?
If you don't do what they're demanding, then you can be accused of discriminating or bullying or you're kind of redefining what bullying is at that point, and it just opens that door.
And I want to remind people, anytime you have a list, anytime you have a list, something is left off the list. So does it still matter if a kid gets beaten to a pulp because they're red-haired, glasses, whatever? Is that really any less of a terrible thing than if someone of some kind of different sexual orientation or whatever the LGBT represents in that situation? Is that... No, they're equally wrong. And that's where people get, and they tried to tell us that, the argument they made in committee was, well, we see the prevalence of this group being bullied more often. That doesn't change the law. The law is everybody that gets bullied needs. So if it's your one kid, it doesn't matter whether they fall into this category or they don't. You need action.
Yeah. And when you mentioned the governor's trying to expand, he said he's trying to encompass all possible
examples
motives
of bullying.
And that's what you're saying is he wants to encompass all reasons for bullying. And exactly what you're saying, once you start trying to list out certain motives, are you then saying that the ones not on the list?
And I know that we could not come up with a comprehensive list on why kids are bullied. There would be no way. If you've been through middle school, we couldn't even come up with, they didn't wear that T-shirt.
Glasses, wearing glasses.
It's absurd.
Yeah, that's why, you can't start listing. You've got to make it clear that all kids should be protected equally from harm. Yeah. Okay, so that should be common sense. Yes. But anyway, moving on. We'd be remiss if we did not bring people up to speed about the battle over slot machines in their local convenience stores. Where are we at with that?
All right. The good news is the governor did, in fact, veto the skill game bill. And so we are very pleased to see that there will not be, at least at this moment, there will not be slot machines in all of our neighborhood convenience stores, truck stops, restaurants, and so on and so forth. That of course, our concern is that leads to crime and really vulnerable people dealing with addiction really struggling even harder.
Yeah. That's the good news.
All right.
The bad news, we've been hearing some rumblings going on, that there's some talking behind the scenes, and it looks like this could possibly rear its ugly head again. Let's just listen to a news clip on that.
To come back to the negotiating table over the future of skill games in the Commonwealth.
What we decided was that we would pick that up at another day, and that's the commitment that we've made, in the same spirit that we made a commitment to work on this budget.
A bipartisan group of lawmakers telling us they'll likely come back to Richmond in the coming weeks to debate a bill legalizing skill games in Virginia. They say they can do that because both the House and the Senate didn't adjourn after approving the state budget yesterday. Rather, they went into recess, meaning the special session is still technically ongoing. Delegate Terry Kilgore says the rules allow lawmakers to debate the budget during the special session, and
it also allows us to bring back any finance bills and things of that nature. So this would be considered a finance bill since it does apply to taxing.
And now skill games opponents are reacting to the prospects of lawmakers returning to Richmond, saying, quote, the amount of oxygen that's being wasted on convenience store slot legalization is truly embarrassing for our Commonwealth.
Okay, let's get your take on this, Victoria. What did you think of what Delegate Kilgore was saying, that they've basically left open an unending recess at this point? And also, I want to know if you agree about, obviously, you agree that this is an embarrassment to the state.
Yeah, okay. First of all, I never want the government to leave themselves open to come back into session. There should be some law that says it has to end when it's supposed to end, because anything could come back. They start all over on something else. And so I hate that. And if they came back to work on this bill, the precedent that would set, I'm just telling you, regardless of what you think about gambling, if they come back to work on a bill because one bill that is not as big as an emergency or a crisis or a fiscal disaster, and they just do it because they didn't quite get where they wanted to go, we're going to have permanent government. Because guess what? Everybody else wants their bills to come back too. And so that is horrific. And the idea that they would come back to deal with slot machine, to add gambling, would be horrific. It would be another embarrassment, yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like they said, we're going to have a timeout that's just forever. Like we're a temporary pause that just keeps going. Like you said, unending government.
Our founders intended a part-time legislature. I'm going to say that again. They intended a part-time legislature. It's not meant to be all year round for good reason. They're supposed to be citizens and just come in, represent, do limited government, and then leave.
Okay, I also do think it is embarrassing. Like you said, it's being elevated to this level. Like our neighborhood stores cannot survive without gambling. I do think that's embarrassing.
I don't even have words, because there are much bigger issues in the world than that. And the idea that this is somehow so important, it can't wait till, believe me, it's coming back. We're going to deal with it next session. People do not think that your efforts and your advocacy on this is over. We will have to next year fight this thing again. But the idea that it needs to come back between now and January because it's some kind of emergency, no.
All right. Okay, I was going to ask you originally for your overall take on the wins and losses now that we have final outcomes for the General Assembly, but obviously maybe we don't really have final outcomes, at least on slot machines. This is starting to be the never-ending session. But just give us, to the best of your ability, your overall take on, up to this point.
I am very pleased at how many vetoes we got out of this governor, that he really was comfortable using the veto pen and using it broadly, often, and in cases that maybe others would have said, oh, this is a minor issue, just let the bill go in, or maybe this is an issue that there's lots of public pressure, so just let the bill go. I'm very pleased, and I think we need to do a really good job thanking him. So I don't know if we've mentioned that, but this is the moment where we step in and we say, we really appreciate what you've done, because remember, he got pounded on some of these issues. And so we need to reinforce, when good things are done, we need to reinforce those.
Yeah, and especially reinforce thanking him for vetoing the slot machine.
Yes, because we know it could still be under negotiation. So yes.
All right. Well, to make this easy for you, we do have a banner on our website, familyfoundation.org, that you can just go look for the Thank the Governor banner right now, or as soon as you finish listening to this, and just take a minute or two to send a thank you to the governor on these key bills that we mentioned for vetoing these anti-family, anti-life bills. So that'll just take a few minutes. Again, that's at familyfoundation.org. And I want to thank everyone for joining us again. It was great to have you. Remember, we are stronger when we speak together, as evidenced by some of the things we talked about today. And be sure and share our podcast playlists and help us get the word out so we can get more people on board. We'll see you next time.